right, guys, we're live here with TJ Visiodie. Is that correct pronunciation? What is it again?
Visiodei.
Oh, perfect. So what's the the origination of that name?
That is ancient Latin, and it means the vision of God within you.
Oh man, I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, guys, TJ has a really cool business opportunity, just awesome thing to share here. I came across him on Instagram and I was like, oh my gosh, we need to bring this to Indiana, or we need to go move someplace with these kinds of properties. So super excited for this conversation. TJ, tell us who you are and what is ACTS Decentralized Real Estate.
Yeah, so my name is CJ Visiodei. I'm the founder and CEO of ACTS Decentralized Real Estate. Honestly, this whole entire project, all glory goes to God, because it's been God leading me this entire time for every single thing, because I actually don't have a construction background. I do not have a real estate background or a farmer's background, and yet I'm creating the most disruptive real estate company, I would say, in the world right now. We get more views than Zillow, Sotheby's, and Hall & Hall combined,
Wow.
okay, when it comes to social media views. And what we do is we go and we buy the world's most beautiful ranches, and we subdivide them into 10, 25, or 50 acre parcels for families that tend to be Christian families. And then from there, we connect people with all of the resources necessary for them to complete their outdoor work, prepare their fields, and then build their home. So literally, we help people set up their own ranchise, which is a profitable farming operation. We carry it all the way through, where we have ranch hands that can help you out, actually, produce from your farm, even though you've never had any experience before, and actually be able to sell that. And then we help people set up their own home, custom home, with all of the off-grid utilities they need, solar, septic, wells, so that at the end of the day, what we are is we're the closest thing to snapping your fingers and having the homestead of your dreams, with it being self-sustaining for you, your children, and the generation after that, and the generation after that.
Oh man, that is incredible. And what I think is so cool about that is, to start a ranch nowadays is next to impossible because of the cost of land,
Yeah,
right?
it's insane. It's insane. There's that meme floating around of, oh, Bill Gates is buying up the land. Oh, Jeff Bezos is buying the land. It's like, yo, if you're still thinking at that level, you don't get it yet. Okay. If
Mhm.
I added up the net worth of Bezos, Zuckerberg, Musk, all of those guys, the top five richest in the world, okay, the top five richest men are only worth 1.5%, actually not even 1.5% of the assets under management of the top five investment funds in the world. Okay. So if I add
Wow.
BlackRock, Vanguard Group, all those guys, okay, that again, they're worth 99 times more than these other guys. Okay. And they're the real ones buying up all this other land. Okay. So we're out competing those investment funds. We're out competing those investment funds, and we have absolutely zero investors. We're simply going out, finding these ranches, and before they get snatched up by Monsanto or one of these other companies, we're making them available to families like yours.
That's awesome. That is so cool. So, what is your background? Because, as you said, you don't have a construction, you don't have a real estate background. Where do you come from?
So I I got psyoped, man, is the way I like to say it. I got psyoped from age 12. My dream was to create the Teen Titan named Cyborg. So I don't know if you ever watched that TV show, but you can Google him, put in Teen Titans Cyborg, and he's this like black superhero, half man, half machine, transhumanist agenda. And I actually got recruited to go to Johns Hopkins University. I was a three-sport athlete there, and I chose them amongst other places, like over University of Pennsylvania and other, like Tulane and other places, because I wanted to be a neurosurgeon. So I actually got a degree in behavioral biology. I did research at Johns Hopkins where I inserted optic fibers into the brains of rats, and I would
Oh,
literally remote control them by affecting their fear and their happiness centers. And I took the MCAT, got a perfect score on the MCAT, was going to go to Harvard or Stanford. But, to be even more specific, I got a perfect score on the psychology section of the MCAT, not the whole MCAT, but the
Okay.
psychology section. The other ones I did very well. The other ones I got, 89th, 90th percentile, but the psychology one, I got a perfect score. And, I was this close to, going to medical school. By the way, I had, been in talks and had reached out to Neuralink by Elon Musk. Okay. And because that was my dream, that's what I was focused on. And I
Hmm.
had a crisis of consciousness, and I realized, what I thought was going to be the most freeing technology in the world was actually going to be the enslavement of mankind. And I thought that
Wow.
if I'm so good at psychology, if I'm getting a perfect score in psychology, maybe I'll be a incredible entrepreneur. So that's when I switched out of the medical school path and switched into entrepreneurship and started down the path of competitive analysis, understanding marketing, understanding video, understanding market psychology, and in general, just how to create a business that really provides value, like the core essence of what value actually is. And that's what ends up informing X, because X is me providing value exactly at the level of human needs, like the actual things that people need and want. So
Oh man, that is you've got a mission here. You got a vision here. That's what I love about it. It's like it's so you just got it all put together with this.
thank
So,
you.
I'm going to digress here just a tad. So you were starting your path into med school
Mhm.
essentially, or in med school. What is your thoughts on big pharma? I mean, because what you're doing with the real estate side of things, disrupting traditional everything, right? So, what are your thoughts on big pharma?
Big Pharma is a development subsidized by Norman Rockefeller with his oil, so like Standard Oil, they needed an offshoot of what they could do with petroleum. So they were like, what, let's start pumping it into drugs and stuff like that, at the same time as like indoctrinating people with all sorts of other things. So the point is, Big Pharma is largely a scam. And the reality is, even a cursory reading of the Bible, the vast majority of sicknesses that actually exist out there are more of a spiritual illness rather than actual physical sickness. It's not some bacteria, right? And if you look at like germ theory, right, it's less about, again, any one single bacteria. It's more about what is the, metaphorically the soil, but more like where is it sticking onto? Like, what is your body doing at the time, right? So
Hmm.
need to heal up their own bodies more than be concerned about like, oh, we gotta worry about some virus, some new thing. So anyways, big pharma is a, I think it's $4 trillion scam, something along those lines. And the reality is that the majority of illnesses could be healed by you owning your own land, you gathering your own resources, you eating foods that aren't chemically poisoned, you grounding and putting your bare feet out on grass, you being
Hmm.
out in the sun, and you enjoying time with your family rather than giving up your time to some other man.
Yeah. It is incredible how spending time in nature, uh, having that spiritual connection with your food, grounding. I mean, I look like such a hippie, and we live in a suburb area right now, and I call it suburbia hell. Although it's a blessing to live where we live, but I mow the grass barefoot, and I get weird looks from my neighbors all the time. But being in the sun, yeah, this damn hippie out there, but or being in the sun and being in nature. I mean, we went on a trip to Colorado 2 weeks ago, and
Mhm,
I slept very little. We had a few drinks, some nice whiskeys, right? We hiked a ton, and we'd work out every single day. There was no stress of work, emails, anything. I mean, of course, we're checking on things and all that, but we're only gone about 4 days. And man, I came back so revitalized. I was tired, right? Physically, I'm drained, but
mhm.
mentally I was so revitalized from that trip. And it's amazing how it just refreshes you being in
It's so
nature like that.
it's so powerful. That's why it's like, okay, like if we have everybody like that, that's, you can't control people like that. That's the
Hmm.
truth. You control people like that. It's just,
Yeah.
it's super powerful. And if you have children growing up in that, I mean, Will and I, we were talking right before the episode started, right? And I was mentioning, yeah, we just sold out of our Tennessee property, and I haven't even shown anybody the final listing yet. Like, we haven't even put out the address yet publicly. And what the question is for everybody listening, if you're a real estate agent right now, and I told you I sold out 38 pieces of real estate, I didn't even show people the pieces of real estate, you'd be like, what, how? That's a lie. That's fake. Okay. And I'm saying that the reason we could do that is because people realize just the value of the lifestyle, period. They realize the value of the community, because it's not just if you do it, plus you're around other people doing it at the same time. People don't even understand this, but the heart works kind of like a Wi-Fi signal, and you will actually ping off of the vibrations. That's what we call it, vibing. You will ping off the vibrations of the people around you. So if it's you, that's one thing. Like, it's hard when you're, in a matrix zone, walking around barefoot, and people don't really understand you. But when other people do understand and they do vibe, that raises people's consciousness in a huge, huge, huge way. So people are, happy to pay in sight unseen, because they see the value of, wow, this is for myself. And then I can have neighbors who are like this. And then my kids grew up around this. My kids can grow up around this. That's a complete difference.
Yeah. People have a really big desire right now to get wild again, to be out in nature and be wild and be primitive. And it's not, it's a trend a little bit, but we see how these concrete jungles and corporate America and big pharma and I mean, hell, the indoctrination alone that happens on network television. My wife and I were watching TV at a resort we were at, and I use the term resort very loosely, but in the middle of Wisconsin, and we were just watching network television because Shark Week was on, right? And the kids would rather watch Shark Week than cartoons, which I absolutely love, but watching these commercials, every other commercial was fast food, every other commercial was some pharma commercial, and it's like, okay, we're promoting crap nutrition that is causing issues that then is leading people to these medications that we're promoting next. It blows me away. In watching, like, we don't have network television at home, so when I turn that on, I'm like, this is total brainwashing right here.
Horrible. It's terrible. I literally, I know exactly what you're talking about. When I am sitting there with my wife, and if for whatever reason we happen to catch regular television these days, and I see commercials, I'm literally like, it's awful how much they're indoctrinating. It really is awful when you wake up to it. It's just like message. They don't even try to sell products anymore.
No.
They don't even try to sell products anymore. At least give me an infomercial or something like that, instead of pushing the agenda again and again and again and again and again. It's insanity. It's insanity.
Well, and the ones that blow me away even more, this blows me away, because you'll find these on Cartoon Network, or like my kids will go over to my in-laws' house and they have network television, kind of old school mindset there, and they have cartoons on for the kids. In these commercials on these cartoon channels or on the Disney Channel are these HIV medication commercials. And I don't know if you've seen those yet, but do what you want, the privacy of your own home. It's not my place to judge you, but like, this is so inappropriate for children to be seeing. It's baffling.
HIV commercials on Cartoon Network. That's wild.
And the commercials are like, it's very inappropriate, to say the least. Like, it's stuff that wasn't on TV 10 years ago, like in a show, and now it's being promoted on a kids television network in between their cartoon. It's disgusting, and that's part of the reason we don't allow this stuff in our household.
Yeah, I like to say with the team, maybe I should cut a check to the elite, because they do the best marketing for me. I mean, I don't even have to explain exactly what ACTS is. Just let them do their own thing, and it will explain itself.
Yeah.
Disney, you're doing a great job. Thank you. All of y'all doing a great job. Thank you very much with all the news, all all of that stuff. Like, please keep at it. Please keep, because the more they try to push nonsense out there, the more people are like, dude, forget about this. Like, I'm gonna head out.
Yeah, it's crazy. So where does the name ACTS, Decentralized Real Estate, come from? I get the decentralized real estate part, but just explain that a little bit.
The name Acts literally is a reference to the book of Acts in the Bible. It's literally a reference to it. And to anybody who's listening to this and is going to be a serious legalist, how dare you? This isn't the perfect exact interpretation of it. It's like, look, man, I'm just explaining this is where I got the inspiration. If I would have said I got the inspiration from the back of a bubble gum, okay, then that's it. But in this case, I got the inspiration while reading the book of Acts. Okay, so I was leading a men's group, and we were reading through the Bible, and we were reading through the book of Acts, and we got to chapter 2. And in chapter 2, in the book of Acts, you have 3,000 people who gathered together on the day of the Pentecost. They all give their lives to Jesus, okay? And it says very clearly that they put their money together and started moving God's kingdom forward. And then in the next chapters, we find out about the early church and how they were moving forward. And one of the most important things about it was actually the land that they used, right? The land was what allowed them to be able to grow their own resources, establish their church, establish all this other stuff. So the place where some people go like, oh no, well, they donated land, it's like, great, okay, but in modern day language, if we were to translate it, okay, realistically, no, I don't expect people to be all donating, all their land and
We
everything.
live in a capitalistic society. Exactly. That can't be done. Yeah,
it's not the same. So if you translate it to today's language and you gather 3,000 people together, then 3,000 people with the average home price in Texas or across the United States, 3,000 people would be worth about $1.5 billion, right? Wow. So with $1.5 billion, how much land could you actually purchase? And the answer is you can buy a ton of land, okay? Because what happens is when you're closer to the epicenter of a city, land skyrockets in price. Right. So people are used to, 0.2 acres. I mean, for actually a lot of people, a quarter acre is a lot. So like more like 0.1 acres for like $100,000, right? And then you go out a little bit further, you can get like 1 acre for $100,000, and a little bit further, 10 acres, for $100,000, right? Or $200,000, something along those lines. Well, if you have a really good piece of land, what happens is that you've got so many people who are competing for that piece of land that's going to be what ultimately jacks up that price. Again, especially if it has amazing natural features. So you have this phenomenon right now in the country where everybody wants to, they want to go wild, as you said. Mm-hmm. They want to have their own land, but they can only afford those 10-acre parcels. So if one parcel goes up, there's like 20 or 30 different offers on it, like within days. Okay. Meanwhile, when you get to the level of lands that are $5 million, $10 million, $25, $45 million, okay, the price per acre becomes incredibly cheap, like outrageously cheap. So I was talking about how it might be like $100,000 for like a tenth of an acre, right? But when you get to the $45 million zone, you can afford land for $1,000 an acre, and it is the absolute most gorgeous land in the world because it might used to have been owned by a CEO of a company, right? So like, the land that we just sold out in Texas, that was owned by the CEO of a company that was doing over $40 million a year, right? And this was his retreat for when he was, he just wanted to chill out from the stresses of the city. So this is like the most pristine land that you could possibly imagine. Yeah. There was another property that we were interested in. Sadly, we couldn't do that specific deal because some investment fund bought it. But it was literally Walt Disney's retreat.
Oh my gosh.
Literally, when Walt Disney wanted to take a break, he would go out to this area. It was over in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And he would go for this, he would hang out over there. Mm-hmm. And if you look in that area, right, of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, to buy 10 acres of land and have a nice home in that specific area, easily you're looking at $20 million, okay? Versus we were going to be offering for that specific one, it was going to be like $500,000 for 10 acres in that area. So $500,000 versus 20 mil, that's the difference that exists. So
that's insane. That is insane. So these properties, I mean, what's been the biggest property you bought you bought so far to do this on?
So the next property we're doing right now is a Florida property that is over 1,300 acres. That's
Wow.
what we're looking at right now. But that's like, we're just getting the engine started, guys. We're just
Hmm.
getting, so the smallest is 492 acres. We're doing 1,300 acres, but like pretty soon we've got some plans for some 4,000 acre properties.
Hmm. That is incredible. What right now, are you guys just trying to plant one of these in every state and then start expanding per state? Or I guess what's the goal right now for you
So
guys?
the goal right now is that we have to be honest, the biggest goal is to shut people up. That's honestly
Mm,
the biggest goal, to shut people up. Because the amazing thing and the sad thing about everything that we do is that for those who don't get it yet, the haters, right? They're just, oh, this is too good to be true,
hmm.
right? It can't be real. You can't do this, because there's just naysayers, right? You
Right.
just have sad naysayers. But I don't really care about that. If you have anything disruptive, you're going to have that anyways, right? That's
Hmm.
just, that's par for the course.
Right.
The hardest thing we have to deal with as a company is actually the people who are a fan of everything that we're doing, people who love what we're talking about, and their mindset is still to go, oh, it must be too good to be true. Like, I can't do it. Like, most people honestly have a slave mindset. Most people do give in to their own doubts.
Yeah.
And so we're doing everything we can to really shut those doubts up and really make people realize, like, no, this is real and this is possible. Because again, a lot of people would rather say, no, we must, this can't be real. I'd rather be a hater on it,
Hmm.
then realize, like, oh, this is real. Because when people find out, like, this is real, it is possible, now they have to face their own personal responsibility and face the harsh reality of, like, you've been talking for years about doing this, right? And now it's been handed to you on a silver platter, and you're still taking inaction. You're still in your comfort zone. And that's a
Hmm.
harsh reality for a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's really, really harsh. Oh, I've been talking about that, but I'm still such a slave to my corporate job. I'd rather just stay with that. Let me rather believe that it's not real, so that I don't have to do anything. That's what happens for most people.
Well, I guess the ideal clientele, but who are the people that are buying these right now? Because you've sold, I mean, as you said, you've sold a ton. So who are the people that are buying these?
Yeah, so for anybody listening in, like, the context, like, so we started our first ranch very recently. It was Texas. There was 40 parcels. We sold that out. It took us 50 days. We were going for Tennessee, and I haven't even announced it yet, and we're already sold out just from the pre-sales. And that's another 38 that we sold out. Florida, we're now at 12 reservations for Florida. If you add up the Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming region, that's another 10 people. We've had some in Kansas, stuff like that. Now, I give you all that to say, I might be the only CEO that I know that is doing what we're doing, like, at this level of the game,
Hmm.
okay? With this type of valuation, that talks to every single customer.
That's
I
cool.
call every single last one of our parcel reservees, and I congratulate them, and I have an hour-long conversation about their hopes, their fears, the obstacles, their setbacks, everything. So I know what's going on with them, okay?
Hmm.
Out of all the people that I've talked to, by this point, it's over 70 plus, right, that I've talked
Yeah.
to. Number one, I didn't expect this, but the vast majority of them have children, multiple children under 5.
Wow.
So I didn't expect, I knew it was going to be a lot, but
Hmm.
I literally expected to be like over 95% of the people that I've talked to, right? That is crazy, okay?
Yeah.
Um, Next, I want to say this. They're what I call de facto Christians, okay? Let me lay this one
Yeah.
out here.
Explain that out.
So de facto Christian stands in opposition to de facto Satanists. All right. So de facto, that word in Latin means in deed or in action. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So a person can call themselves whatever they want. Okay. let's actually look at your actions, because there's people who all day they'll talk. When you look at their actions, it plays out. So de
Yeah.
facto Satanism, right, is that a person might call themselves whatever, but in action they follow the tenets of Satanism. So for example, there's a lot of people, they'll say they're Christian, but they still have a me mindset.
Right.
They still will believe in moral relativism, which, by the way, those are the first two tenets of Satanism: me thinking and selfishness, and then moral relativism, especially
Mm,
in regards to money or power. Okay, those are
wow.
two primary tenets. And so, again, I'll get a lot of people, oh, I'm blah 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 blah. But when it comes down to it, boom, that's when the accuser comes out. That's when the nastiness comes out, and they throw all those niceties right out the window. The next tenets of Satanism are going to be Darwinism, social Darwinism, the belief that there's like one set of people who are going to be better than another set of people, right?
Mm,
And lastly, you're going to see dysgenics, so like the belief that like some people should be cut off or some people should be cut out in some way, shape, or form, or killed off or something like that.
mm,
So, anyways, the de facto Christian is a person that it's not about virtue signaling. Oh, I've gone to church this many times. Virtue signaling about like, oh, well, I've read the Bible this many times a day, every single day, but more like their mindset on like, dude, I want to have this land because I can't wait to feed people, right? That's the deeper understanding. Like I'm going after this land because, not because, you see, like the way that de facto Satanist thinks is that, like, I'll get messages from people who'll be like, oh, I love this. I want to just buy the land because I just want to put in 50 Airbnbs. This is a great exchange on value. When I looked at the interest rates, and this is a great time for the interest rates. You see what I'm saying?
wrong
So,
client. Yeah.
like, they're playing, oh, I'm Christian, but it's like at the end of the day, it's all just about that. Versus like de facto Christian, I'm saying, is someone who goes like, yeah, honestly, God told me to do this, so I'm just going to do it. I don't
Mm,
even know how we're going to be able to come up with this stuff, but I literally just listen to God, and if He told me that this is going to be the right play, then I'm just going to do it.
hands off.
Right?
Jesus,
Simple.
Jesus, take the wheel. Right.
Exactly. Right. And so, the next point I want to make, I get people, okay, and I'll be honest, I actually get it the most from the Black community, all right,
Hmm.
asking me, oh, is this just for a certain group of people? So like, I've had people accuse me of all people. So if anybody could watch this video, they'd understand the irony. Okay, they'll be like, oh, is this just for white people? Is there anybody is there anybody who's a minority on the thing? And I'm like, dude, what? Like, do you see who's the CEO for a second?
Oh
You know,
my gosh. Yeah.
I know that sound, but it's because a lot of people have been actually psyoped and they really believe it. I've had people call me Uncle Tom and stuff like that just because I try to offer this. Okay,
Unbelievable.
I had
Yeah.
some of the like unbelievable stuff. So,
Hmm.
um, we have people from all backgrounds, okay? So we have people who they're white, they're black, they're Hispanic, they're Asian, okay? They're Hawaiian, the native. I've got multiple, not one, not two, not three, but four different examples of people who are Native American. They're over the moon about what we're doing because they're like, oh my gosh, this is a great way to take back some more land. Like, this is a great opportunity with regards to that.
Yeah.
And again, everybody, they have these family values. They all understand, okay, like the state's an issue, the bank's an issue, tech is an issue. They understand those aspects, and they
Hmm.
see the value, and they're excited to move God's kingdom forward by taking action. And they see that coming out in this community, and they're done with all the talk. They're ready to take action. That's just what I notice with everybody.
That's that's so cool. I know we talked about this a little bit earlier, but I kind of want to take a step back here. And you talked about being inspired to help people, right? And that's kind of what took you out of pharma, essentially, or out of medical school. What inspired you to start ACTS Decentralized Real Estate? I know you were reading ACTS, and that's kind of where the name comes from. But like, what was the moment you were like, man, I
Yeah.
got to do this, and holy crap, here's the road to do it.
Yeah, so the specific moment that I'd started, the specific moment was when I was putting gift wrapping paper into my fireplace. So let me explain. So my daughter was, let me start back a little bit more before that. I used to have a marketing company, and we specialized in competitive analysis and business development, right? People would come to me, and I'd figure out your top 10 competitors, what they're doing better than you, what they're doing worse than you, what all the Google reviews are, and exactly what their offers are. Then, given your strengths, here's what I would do to place something as an offer that would make you the number one in your given market, right? That's what I would do. And at 27 years old, I was doing very, very well. I was very happy. Started, making six figures for the first time in my life, and I moved into a gated community. That's like one of the nicest communities in the area of Houston that I lived in. Right, this place is goals for most people. Like it's
Are
goals.
you from Texas originally too?
I'm from Miami. I was born and raised in Miami, and then I moved out of Miami to Texas a month before COVID hit because God told me and my wife just go to Texas, and we didn't delay, and it was like literally perfect timing. So that's when, and we didn't have any. That's what I was saying. Like it was a huge thing because we didn't have a job lined up. We didn't have anything lined up. We scrounged and we created this company. I'm not exaggerating. While on the road, while living in Airbnbs, right, to bring it to where we could finally afford a house, in this nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I was having my first daughter. She was born. And less than 24 hours after she was born, there was the worst winter storm in Texas history. Like it hadn't been a winter storm like that, like actual snows, like several inches of snow in that area.
You guys aren't prepared for that at all down there.
Yeah, it's like the weirdest thing ever for that to happen. So that was less than 24 hours of me being a dad. And so again, it was a natural birth at home. So my wife was recovering in bed, and we had no heat, no water, no electricity, no food because all the food had to be heated. Okay, no protection because I had no guns. Okay, and I had basically nothing of value to provide to anybody in any way, shape, or form to be able to just barter and get some wood or something like that. I didn't have wood in my backyard, so I didn't even have something to just heat up. So that's when I had to rip up the baby shower gift, gift wrapping, and I was burning it one by one to provide heat for my family. And I was humiliated. Because here I am thinking like I'm good. I made it. This is where people retire and they're happy. This is where their whole lives to be at. We're safe. No, you're not safe. No. And so I'm sitting there doing that, and I'm just like, dude, I'm mumbling under my breath, like, I'm never gonna let this happen again. This is humiliating. I hate this. I feel like a failure. I can't. I mean, I'm not even one day in, and I can't even do basics. I can't even do basics for my family.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, I got to get out of here. And then the next thing that happened was like, there was an HOA in that neighborhood, and there was the HOA president. She knocks on the door, literally as I'm like, burning that stuff, and I hear do, and I go, hey, and she's like, hey, I've got brownies. I heard the new baby's here. I'm like, oh, great, thank you so much.
You got any firewood instead?
Yeah, oh, thank you so much for the brownies and stuff like that. And so, I thought she was going to just lay the brownies in. We're going to talk for a second because I was like, my wife's recovering. And then she starts just walking around through the house, like playing around with all the faucets and stuff like that. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, well, the HOA, we're worried about a leak risk, or we're worried about frozen pipes. So I'm just going in, HOA regulations require me to go in and check all the pipes for you. I'm like, my wife's recovering right now. I need you to get out of the home immediately. Like, please, don't, what are you doing? I got Trojan horsed, right?
Yeah.
I'm sitting there thinking like, okay, this is literally like my last straw. Like this freaking HOA, this freaking house, I'm done with this. So I'm like, okay, let's go find a solution for me to be able to move out as fast as possible so I can have a home for my family. And I start looking around. And, for those of you guys listening in, but in Texas, all right, there's plenty of what are called acreage communities and agrihoods. So an community is where there will be like, oh, we sell, you'll see a sign on the road and it'll literally say like 2 acres starting at $89,900, 5 acres starting at like $250,000, whatever it might be, right? So I was like, okay, no big deal. I'll just go buy some of the acreage at the acreage community. I go and I show up. and I'm talking to the guy as he gives me the tour, and I'm like, okay, great. So I want to have cattle for my land. Let's just find some land that is the best land for that. Oh, I'm sorry, we can't do that. We actually have a POA that says that a POA is not a HOA; it's a property owners association.
Gosh.
Okay, as if it's so different.
Yeah.
Okay, like to protect property values, we do not allow you to have cattle. You can only have 2 chickens per acre, and you can have 1 horse. And I'm like, what's the point of this?
Yeah.
What's the point of your existence right now if I can't even have the one thing that I want this for? And then I go check out another thing that was it got voted America's best master plan community development, and it's what's called an agrihood. So I go check out that one, and turns out it's just a marketing scam because it's a 2,000 acre development with like 3 or 4 homes per acre, and out of the whole development, there's one, like maybe 1.5 acre little plot, okay, with a couple of different veggies, and then literally like in the corner, a shed with 4 goats. And that's what they're claiming is an agrihood because it raised the property value of all of those houses by like 50% compared to anything else. So another example of like false advertising or just not being the thing. And as I mentioned, my job was to just look at competitors and figure out what their strengths and weaknesses are. And I go through Zillow, I go through survivalrealty.com, I go through horseproperties.net, I go through the acreage communities, I go through the co-ops, and I'm just like, there is no person on the planet that just offers the land and then says, here, I will help you build the home and just some basic farming equipment. There's nobody who just does this. What in the world? And so that's when I literally like felt like oh my gosh, like it's actually just up to me. Like it's actually just up to me. Like, actually just up to just us doing this. And the next big sign was that the cryptocurrency that I was involved in skyrocketed upwards. When I was
This
talking to
wasn't Dogecoin, was it?
no, I was invested in a cryptocurrency called DAG,
Okay.
Constellation AG. I'm not going to go into the whole thing about it, but the thesis that I had for it was basically that they'd locked in a government contract that was going to make it so it was the exclusive coin and exclusive blockchain technology for use by like the Air Force and like military and all this other stuff. So I was like, man, this skyrocket, and it did. And I took it out at like the perfect time at like when it was valued at 38 cents, and now it's actually less than 3.8 cents.
Yeah.
So
Sounds like Dogecoin a little bit.
yeah, it was it
Yeah.
was like the perfect timing with regards to that one. So I took out every single dollar. God told me take out every single dollar out of this, and I just invested in my education like a madman. I paid $5,000 for a land development course. Paid $15,000 for a course on investment funds. Paid another $10,000 on another course on real estate. Paid another $5,000 for another real estate coach. Then started whining and dining to gather my board of advisors. So like literally, I'd mentioned, for example, I went to an acreage community. I went and I found the lead land developer for that community, and I bought him his dinner, talked to him about my ideas, and just slowly but surely put together a board of advisors who, all told, my board of advisors, they've done $5.5 billion of real estate transactions, but it's like each one of them in their own little siloed area, like their one expertise.
Right.
And I had to, there was no book, there was no course for it, but it was figuring out how do we put it all together so that it can culminate in the ACTS business model.
Yeah. Man, that is a story. That's incredible. We we had a little pop like that with Dogecoin, and
Yeah.
we pulled out 2 weeks too soon. Still
Oh,
still came away real like it's funny because I
really?
tell people it's like the most painful money I've ever made because it would have been worth 5 times what we pulled it out. I mean, we invested 2 grand
Yeah.
and pulled 6 figures. So it's
Wow.
like we still did good, but if we had waited 2 more weeks, Super Bowl that night sold, it would have been 500K. It's just incredible. But that man, that is so. It's funny how crypto helped a lot of people out and also wrecked a lot of people too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, no, I absolutely love what this is about. So, how does I mean, what's the process to this? How does somebody go about, setting this up? They get in touch with you, and then they go from there, and just kind of walk us through the process of what this looks like.
This is kind of wild and this is controversial. Some of you guys are not going to believe it, but what I've actually found is that people are better off not talking to me. They're
Hmm.
much better off not talking to me. Like the number of people who have just bought their land, never talking to me versus like talking to me, it's vast. Okay. And the reason is because a lot of people project, and this is a very powerful thing. Like I'm telling you, like buying this land, like it's way more than just like look, there's Land.io, right? If you
Hmm.
really want, you can go to Land.io. They offer land for like 40K for like super cheap, garbage land out there. No help, no none of this.
Hmm.
Buying to acts, you know, it's a different feeling because you're part of the community now. We have no HOA. You own your own land. It's not any co-op, okay? It's not any REIT, right? There's those real estate investment trusts, like you own your own land, but it's a different thing for people. So I actually say if they try to talk to me, what happens is they might come away from the conversation being like, wow, I learned a lot, but they'll still almost think to themselves like, oh, it's just because TJ is persuasive, not because like Axe just stands on its own merits.
Right.
So people will find an excuse if they do that versus if they do their own due diligence. Now, on our website, we have a frequently asked questions section. So if you want to know our website, anybody listening, it's actsdereal.com, ACTSDEREAL.com, except no other alternative spellings, no underscores, no dashes, no double L, none of that stuff, okay? So when you go there, you can go to the frequently asked questions section. And on that section, I have 135 of the most frequently asked questions. I recorded an answer to every single one of those in a 1 to 2 minute video format with subtitles in 4K so the person can make a conclusion on their own. Once the person realizes the obvious, that Axe is awesome, then they can simply click the menu button and say reserve a parcel. That is a $2,500 parcel reservation fee that can apply to any Axe property anywhere in the world. You can literally write in the location that you want. And if a person writes it in, we will come out to that location eventually. Okay. So to be even clearer about how that works. So for example, one person wrote in for Florida and I said, hey, we finally got our first Florida parcel reservation. And then 12 more people went in and applied for Florida. They paid them $2,500 for Florida. And so
Hmm.
we're actually planning for Florida in winter of next year. So like 2024 into 2025 was going to be Florida. But
Wow.
because so many people did it, we were like, you know what, let's just get it up and running. So now we're going to have Florida in September, right? We're
Wow.
all the way up. Okay. And same thing, like now we're starting to see Georgia popping up. More and more people are going for Georgia.
Hmm.
Okay. California, I just showed you the California property, which if you guys saw it, it's insanity. Okay. That's how people can reserve it. Now, while a property is not available yet, then like you're good. You just chill out. You can hang out in our online forum. We have now 600 people in our online forum, literally 600 people with the same mindset, guys, that you can talk to
Hmm.
about technologies, ideas, designs, all of these different things. Okay. And then when we do finally have a property available, then we let you know. We literally say, hey, this property is now available.
Yep.
Okay. You can now, you now go, it's in a first come, first served basis. You choose the parcel that you actually want. So
Hmm.
if 13 out of 38 people, like for example, Tennessee, then you wait for the other 12 people first, and then you choose your parcel, and then everybody else behind you. And you just choose one of those. Now that you've chosen your parcel, okay, we give people about 45 days to gather their financing and send it into escrow. So financing, there's a lot of options. You can use any loan that you want. You can use a USDA rural development loan. You can use a USDA beginner farmers loan. You can use a VA loan. You can use a land loan. You can use a HELOC. You can use basically anything you can come up with so long as you
Hmm.
can send the money into escrow. And then after about 45 days, in the meantime, we're doing the government approvals. We're making sure that it's fully recognized as a whole new plat, which means that, there's new deeds, for every single person, everything else like that. We make sure everything's signed off. The last minute thing that we have is we have a background check. We make sure that you're not a sex offender. We make sure that you're not a violent criminal. That's the main thing that we're just going to be looking for. And then you have a deed restriction that you just sign as well. The deed restrictions are simply that you're not going to be poisoning the land through chemicals or through EMFs, and that you're not going to be doing things that are like super, like ridiculously disruptive to the neighbors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Besides that, like it's very relaxed rules. And then, that's it. You just
Yeah.
close up now your land.
So you're just making sure that people have good neighbors, essentially.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's again, there's no HOA. The issues are settled in contract. It says it. They're settled through mediation and arbitration, which is the biblical way of doing things. So it's not let's go to the U.S. government. It's literally, hey, Will, why do you have a junkyard? Like this is like at the very least, okay, you need to have your stuff for whatever reason. It's sentimental value. Can we at least agree that you put it in the back or something like that? Okay, we can do something like that. That like it's stuff like that where you can just talk to the actual neighbor and figure out a way to mediate it.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Going back to your story of inspiration on all this and what led you to this, I think this is so cool, and I hate this word empowering, but it's empowering, right? Like there's no other word for it, because in suburbia hell, we all work so hard to get there, and then we get there and life sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, you love your family, right? You love your family, but we're going to our 9 to 5. We're coming home. We're going to the grocery store. We're coming. Actually, shit, I just went on a rant. The episode that'll be released before this, Braden and I, Braden's our producer. We introduce him to everybody because he's kind of been behind the scenes since the beginning. And I go on a little bit of a rant about the ordered groceries, like being able to just order your groceries and have them delivered to your home. It's like we quit farming our food. The least we could do is go to the grocery and pick our food, right? But I think this is so cool because we're castrated as humans right now, and that's how the government wants us. That's how corporate America wants us, so that we're reliant on them. And what you are doing is giving people the power to provide for themselves back.
That's exactly the case. That's exactly the case. And for anybody listening in, I'm sure you've got the question like, how am I going to make this work? Like you talk about empowerment, right?
Mm-hmm.
People go, how am I going to make this work? How can we do this? And I mean it. One of the cool things about having talked to every single person as the CEO, knowing what the whole market looks like for a fact, okay, most people are not these like, people who are balling out. Like, sure, like they're doing well, they're doing relatively well. They're not literally like in poverty.
Yeah.
But by no means would anybody say that these are the richest people on the planet who are able to buy land. Okay. And yes, they don't have all the answers just yet for every single thing. And yet they're able to take action. Yeah. And we are, empowering people to start learning how to farm stuff. And I think what you just mentioned is a great transition into the next thing on how do people actually afford things, right? Because, you might be expecting a bill at the end of the day for land, plus a home, plus utilities, plus the farming equipment, plus the animals, plus even an Airbnb cabin to make money on that, right? All of that would be $850,000, right? $750,000, something along that line. Not everybody can afford that just yet. So how can we actually do that? How can we bridge that gap? And that's the next interesting part of this conversation, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I'll dive into that here in just a second. I am curious, do you guys lay utilities or lay power lines, or is that something that you guys handle as you're prepping this land? Or
the only kind of utility that we lay down at least, is the fiber optic internet, so that you can have completely so even though it's completely off grid, the one thing we have is we make sure you have fiber optic internet, and fiber optics so that you're not dealing with EMF radiation, buzzing through your brain and your children's brains.
Right.
But we do not put in sewage, we do not put in asphalt roads, and we do not put in your typical power lines,
Okay.
because those things, they connect you to the grid. They make it, it basically ruins the point.
Yeah.
We do add in gravel roads, okay, and dirt roads.
That's the best kind of road anyways,
Yeah,
man.
exactly. It's one of the best roads. If you're going to put in asphalt roads, for anybody listening, asphalt roads cost about $1 million per mile.
Wow. That's insane.
So it's
I
just
didn't know
like,
that.
for most properties, it might double the cost for every single parcel. Not even profitability, just like literally the cost, and just
Yeah.
break even cost on every parcel. So we're just like, why would we do that? If we just skip that, we just go with the dirt road. We can get it done faster and
Hmm.
more affordable. So even though I said we don't include it with the parcel price, like you're not going to get the sewage pipes and all that other stuff,
Yeah.
when you do finally decide to do your home design, we do have the best partners in the world to help you out with all the utilities that make it so that you more than make up for not having your regular public grid electricity
Right.
and everything else. So if you think about it another way, okay, there's this connotation with living off grid with like going backwards or something like that. Like, oh, it's like this backwards living or it's this rural living. It's like, it doesn't have to be that way. If you
Hmm.
actually think about it, off grid technologies are more advanced than on grid technologies,
Yeah.
right? Power lines haven't changed for at least 70 years.
Hmm.
Sewage hasn't changed for 100 years. Septic hasn't changed for 100 years.
Hmm.
Meanwhile, there are solar panel technologies that are coming out every single day, right?
Yep.
Like solar roofing technology, solar battery technology. How about hydrogen battery technology? That's a whole thing that most people don't even know about, right? You can use
Hmm.
hydrogen to store energy. With regards to wells, right? You can put a well in there, and you can have it, with really powerful systems to detect water before you even drill the well, which is really, really cool and saves a lot of costs. And the really what we're excited about is the septic systems that we use.
Hmm.
So we use something called sludge hammer septic systems, which is, it's designed almost overall like a normal septic tank. So just a big tank that goes in the ground, right? That holds waste.
Yeah.
But the difference is you put kind of an aerating hole at the top of it, okay? And you put there's a special blend of bacteria that will break down human waste.
Hmm.
And it turns the septic tank into having two chambers, one chamber for the main parts of the waste that are coming in at first, and then the second chamber as a holding chamber for the next parts, right? In that second chamber, what's coming out of that is actually, it takes out the majority of the toxicity of it. It takes out all of that nasty stuff and actually turns it into usable biomaterials.
Hmm.
So you then seep it out the other side of it, and it can go out into your backyard, into your plants, and into your food forest, and it will actually grow the plants for you in an amazing way. Like, it's like the best fertilizer. So
Really?
yeah, so like basically it takes human waste and turns it into this like hyper fertilizer. I mean, if I were to show you, if I go to the website, right? If I go to Sledgehammer,
Hmm.
they have a case study, right? Pond Hill Farm. And for any of you guys who are listening and not watching, okay, you can see a giant pumpkin right here. Okay, there's a giant pumpkin on screen that is
Yeah.
grown and is giant because it's connected to one of these sludge hammer systems and is fed by the fertilizer that comes out of it naturally.
Wow. And that was grown from that sledgehammer system.
Yeah, yeah.
So how did you find these guys? Because you've now set up all these partnerships with these types of vendors,
Years of
essentially.
hard work, man. Years of hard work, and learning to be the dumbest one in the room, and just find people who are more knowledgeable than me to give me
Hmm.
thoughts. Always, always, always like, hey, what would you do for this? Hey, how would we do this? What do you know? What systems do you know?
Yeah.
What are you thinking about with this? So, like, for example, we have Liam. He's our resident permaculture expert, and he'll tell me, hey, TJ, have you checked out this guy? Or this other guy is a joke, don't go with him. Or
Yeah.
check out this technology, or this is an issue with this chemical. And then we'll talk to, the other day, for example, we had a mastermind meeting with Liam, Zach, and Connor. So like Zach and Connor, they're both in architecture, but they have their own respective strengths. So like Connor is incredible at landscape design. Zach he has a software company called Lemongraft that helps people with ordering and delivering farm to home produce, basically. And
Okay.
he's also an architect. So we talk through those different ideas. And,
Hmm.
I sit back and I know what my job as a leader, sure, there's sometimes decisions that have to be made within the company that'll just be like, let's just go with this one, simple
Right.
as that. But the rest of the time, I sit there and I say, okay, this is the goal. Give me your ideas. What are you guys thinking about this right now?
Hmm. That's something I've learned in business ownership. I'm a partner in an insurance firm named
Mhm.
Legacy Insurance Enterprises. I own Legacy Athletics, and then we have the Legacy Minds podcast, right? And yeah, the one thing I've learned is like never be the smartest person in the room. Yeah, I everybody around me is much smarter than I am, and people look at me and they're like, you're the dumbest person here. I'm like, yeah, I know, and that's okay. Though my skill set is bringing all the right people together, and I've been very very blessed to be given that kind of skill set. It allows me to do what I love and what I'm good at, and it's getting to hang out and meet new cool people and have conversations.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.